Yeah, he may be struggling to get in, but we can bring Michael in shortly if he joins. So anyway, let me just start admitting people, and then we'll take from there. Okay. Right. Good morning, Adrian. Good morning, Adrian. Morning, Charles.
Good morning.
Morning, Chris. Morning, John.
Hi.
Morning, Michael Bromwich. Good to see you. Thanks for joining You're on the panel, Michael. So glad that you've joined, and thanks for joining. Appreciate that. Morning, Mark. Morning, Nicola. Great to see you. And if you've just joined, if you could mute. If you're a panelist, don't mute. But if you're a non-panelist, then please mute. That'd be good. There's a few others joining as well. Here we go. Morning, Neil. Morning, Paul. Thanks for joining. If you've just joined, if you could mute, please, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Okay, there'll probably be a few last-minute stragglers, but I'll monitor the lobby there as well. Right, okay. Morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's Pension Playpen Coffee Morning. It won't take a rocket scientist to guess what today's subject's about, which is tomorrow's budget. We have an esteemed panel of specialists on today. Some of you will know through regular Playpen events, some of you may not know, but we can go around and basically introduce the panelists first. So Fiona, do you want to start and just give us 10 seconds as to who you are, where do you come from, in typical sort of blind date fashion? And actually,
Wow.
Fiona, sorry, before you start, we are recording. So David, Michael, John, Peter, everybody's thumbs up for recording. Okay, number one. Number two, this is a bit of a free-for-all. It's going to be a bit of a free-for-all today. So if at any point you want to ask a question or make a point, please raise a hand. But Fiona, do you want to start? Just introduce yourself, literally 10 seconds, and then we'll move on to the other panelists.
Yeah, absolutely. Fiona O'Hara, I work for Goddard Perry Employee Benefits, so employee benefit specialist. I self-styled apparently. Yeah, so look, we mainly in the SME space, so this affects quite a lot of our clients really, this budget, I would expect.
Yep, brilliant. Okay. Con, do you want to go next?
I'm just a financial analyst who's been around for rather a long time.
Yeah, you have, but you're very well respected, Con, which is great. Thank you for joining the panel. Michael, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm a retired LSE accounting and finance professor, and I got into pensions when I was saving one of the disability organisations, and
Okay.
I've never been able to get out of it since. I would say that when I was in charge of accounting at LSE, the one thing I always delegated to other people with pension accounting.
Yep.
No,
it's important. It's important, and just for everybody's benefit, Michael's worked very hard behind the scenes, and we'll show you a table soon of some key points to be discussed today. So, Michael, thank you in advance for preparing the table, and I'm sure Henry or I can grab that table and share it in a minute. JQ, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Hi, good morning. I'm John Quinlivan. I'm an actuary by birth, apparently. In the DB/DC space, we advise corporates on endgame, run-on, and settlement strategies, and also we have our own insurer and reinsurer structure behind the value share solution that M&G have recently launched. So it's more institutional than retail.
Yeah, but impact. I think this is the important thing to say to everybody is that it's an impact on the whole population, whether it's institutional or individual or whatever. So yeah, it's important. It's important that we discuss these matters, and I hope everybody gets something out of today. That's what Playpen is all about. We do like to discuss matters and debate, but we want to get something out of today. So we really, really would prefer everybody's impact if possible. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just admitting Millie. Good morning, Millie. Thanks for joining. And I'll share my screen, and we'll form this properly as part of the presentation. So can everybody see that? This is a grey table.
Yep.
Fiona, can you see that?
I
Is it
can,
big
yeah.
enough? Is it big enough, or shall I make it slightly bigger?
Make it a bit
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Let's just move it along a bit. There we go. That might be better. 170% now. Can everybody see that? Let's try a bit more. That's a bit better. There you go. 190% now. There you go. Right. Okay.
Have you got a Braille version?
Yeah, well, sadly not. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, no, I appreciate. Braille's not available, and that's not entirely good. Okay, so this is the table that Professor Mike Bromwich has prepared, and this is basically undertaking some analysis. Mike, before we study this table in detail, do you just want to give your background on this? How do you want this to sort of? What was your thinking on producing this table, Mike?
Well, basically, it's private pension funds, so public pension's not in there at all, and it's simply all the things in the budget, as far as I could see, would like to be in the budget, as far as I could see, which has some sort of pension implication. And the two columns, there's a column which tells you what's going on, as it were.
Yep.
And then there's a column that is titled with tax increase. That's when the Chancellor got up and said that there'll be 2p on everything. And that went down on that one. And all of a sudden, the OBR suddenly found some good things. We don't know what they are, at least I don't know what they are. And so she stopped the first column and went to the second column. And basically, what it shows, I think, is that there are a number of the first column, she's scrabbling about for 2 billion here, 2 billion there, and so on. In the second column, it all works perfectly well, and basically, if we went down the second column, we would end up with meeting a 20 billion deficit, plus an extra 5 or so billion for extra buffer. And that seems to be okay.
Okay. So
okay.
So for everybody's benefit, just to say that these columns add up to 25 billion or 22 billion. So really great. Sorry, Michael, go on.
That's right. I can throw some light on that last U-turn of Rachel Reeves on the OBR. The principal change that the OBR made was in their projection of productivity growth over the coming year. Now, prior to any of this, they were actually talking about previous productivity growth estimates have been optimistic, seriously optimistic, to the tune of about 0.3%. Now, to put that, and that Reeves was aware of at the time of the last budget, let alone this one. That, to give you some context, a productivity growth rate of 0.1%, depending on exactly how you do the numbers, is between around 7.5 billion and 9 billion of deficit in the overall finances. So, and recently, the last change, Reeves' last U-turn, came about because the OBR apparently decided they were not going to increase, or rather decrease, the productivity estimate from by 0.3, but in fact by 0.2, and perhaps even a little less than that, which would then say that the deficit estimate goes from sort of 20 to 25 billion, down to around 15 to 20 billion. And that's why that's the cover that Reeves has for the last U-turn. I don't buy it. I think that. Sorry, was someone saying something? No,
I
okay.
don't know if that was Michael.
I mean, I don't buy it. I think the correct number is closer to the 0.3 lower. I think also that there are some serious drag effects implicit in the proposed budget changes, in particular business rates, but we'll talk about that later.
Yep.
Sorry, that I think is the background to Reeves' last U-turn. I'm actually amazed that more people have not made the point. The leaking all of this stuff and flying all of these kites the way they have done over the last 3 months has been materially detrimental to UK economic growth and performance. I know of a number of people who have put things off simply because of the uncertainty that was being created by Reeves and the Treasury. But I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Okay. JQ, what do you think about the U-turn on taxes and
Well, I think Colin's point, the point that's really relevant in all of this is what are the bond market? I think what the bond market's going to do. The bond markets typically are called vigilantes, and that's an inappropriate term. What they are is that they're very vigilant, they're very analytical, and when they aren't confident in statements that are made, and when they see flip-flopping, they get nervous. And as we know, where rates are now, one of the big challenges of the government of this day is that the interest payments they've got to make on the debt that they've raised is significant, and therefore they really need to keep the bond markets on side. That is incredibly challenging with the productivity piece that Con mentioned, because there's very little headroom. And it's really tight. I mean, the really sensible, smart thing that most commentators have said is make it simple, put a couple of points on income tax. The likelihood of that happening would seem low because of the impact of the MPs who are going to squeal and say you're going to put my seat at risk. So it's a detail more complex.
John, you've gone silent.
You've gone a bit quiet, John. Sorry.
My theory is that we end up with more complexity, and what I'm hearing at the moment is that the HMRC are struggling with the tax codes as they speak because of the complexity.
Yeah. Okay. Fiona, what do you think? I mean, do you think, obviously, I don't think the headline rate's going to change, but maybe they might decrease some of the limits. What do you think, Fiona?
I don't know. I think like everyone else has said, I think they're so scared to be unpopular that I think I can't see much changing that. Or if it does, I wouldn't rule out them backtracking on it like they've done with a lot of other things before. I mean, it's not a stealth tax, but I think some of the other ways of raising taxation are probably going to appeal to them more, because not everyone is going to be affected. So not everyone is going to be complaining about the same issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And Michael, what's your what's your thought before we move on? What's your thought on this sort of tax U-turn? Do you think that it'll be a complete U-turn, or do you think they might trim some of the allowances, or what do you think, Michael?
Well, I think roughly what my second, third column says. But I mean, if you actually think about it, if we ignore politics at the moment, if you take the 20 billion and then take the 10 billion that the OBR just given us, that gets you very near where you want to be, without the fuss of looking for little diddly things here, there, and everywhere. But of course, the Chancellor's enormously locked in, as we just heard. She's locked in by the markets. she's locked in by the we won't change any of the big taxes. She's locked in by a number of people in the Parliament, in the Labour Party, who are much more concerned to spread money out, and she's locked in by other people who are very worried about losing their seats. All things considered, she has very little room to move. And I guess if you look at my table, she's not doing too bad a job in trying to get out of that to a degree. But basically, I think you've got to reduce the politics of the thing and say, look, put up big income tax by a couple of points, and that will get you very near where you want to be.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me come in there, because I think the Reeves' biggest problem is none of the above. I think Reeves' biggest problem was setting a 9 billion or a 9.9 billion headroom level. That's actually about a third of the historic headrooms that chancellors have used. The historic average over the last decade or so has been about 31 billion or so. And if you were to simply increase the level of headroom and spend part of that, your problem disappears. And we don't need to have this repeat discussion over tax rises again and again and again. I think it's actually as much the discussion of tax rises which is hurting Labour, as in fact their actual increases. Although the increases on the corporate sector in the last budget were draconian and have really hit home, particularly in the hospitality sector.
No, absolutely. Okay. The next, we'll move on to reduced tax relief. I mean, Michael, you're basically saying that's not even on the table. Is any of the panelists aware of any hint that tax relief on pension contributions may be adjusted or take out the higher rate? Or anybody got an opinion on that before we move on? Does everybody agree?
I mean, one of the big challenges if they were to do that would be the impact, for example, on doctors and the like. The chance of that happening is so low at this moment in time.
They'd have a national health strike on their hands so fast they couldn't see it.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's off the table then.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, that's fine. We get that. They're all.
There'll be nobody on the operating table, I think, is what Con's saying.
Oh, okay, fine. There we go. Cool. Okay.
I think this. I mean, it's not just the NHS; the civil service more widely, isn't it? It's
Yes.
But if they strike, we like that.
There you go. So let's assume that possibly that isn't going to be on the table at all, on the surgical table. Okay. The third option is we're looking at tax-free lump sum. Now I know that there's a possibility there that and there's been a lot of scrabbling around the dinner tables of many homesteads. There's a number of people of a certain age saying, I'm going to take my tax-free cash. Even Tom McPhail, who's been on this coffee morning playpen sessions for many times, even Tom McPhail wrote, I think, in the Times saying he was taking his cash. There's evidence, though, Michael, that you're saying that that's withdrawn and that's not going to happen at all. Or is that firm, or is that just your guess, Michael?
That's my guess.
Okay.
It's all guesses. I mean,
no,
the other thing we ought to bear in mind is almost everything we've written down is going to be wrong in a year's time or 2 years' time. And that's something we need to think about much more. And again, it brings back the buffer point. It's got to be bigger than it is at the moment. The tax-free cash is something everybody likes, I think. It means you can pay off your mortgage, get a new wife or husband or whatever, and do all sorts of exciting things. And I think very much a have a go at that would, I think, cause other strikes.
I would have ordinarily said that the tax-free cash was not going to be further decreased. But the problem is the boys and girls at Resolution Foundation, which of course is where Torsten Bell came from, are very keen on the idea. And I've had people there suggesting to me that the tax-free cash should be reduced to £100,000 from the current 268, whatever it is. So if I were in a position where I had unrealized tax-free cash, I would have taken it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
I
a good
think
opinion.
I think that
Fiona,
100k is something I've seen too floated around. I think it depends on how people use it. I don't know whether they'll do it this year or whether we're starting to see people use it as part of their tax planning. So I think people are a bit smarter. Well, I don't say smarter, but are using are retiring differently than they were when pension freedoms first came in. So I think a lot more people are using it as an allowance of their annual allowance of the money they're taking. So I suspect if that trend continues, that will be when they perhaps look to reduce it because people aren't taking it as a lump sum and they're using it to reduce their annual tax bill.
like a sort
Does
of
any-
phased retirement. Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
anybody know why it was put in the first place? Was it just to encourage people to do pensions, or
I think
some
it was
other
from the
reason?
DB, hangover from DB, I guess.
Well, the thing
Oh,
to remember is between DB and DC, it's slightly different. In one case, it's 25% of your pot, and in the other case, it's the commuted value of 25% of your income. Yeah, which means the tax-free commutation rate is important. Also, the commutation rate for tax-free lump sums is important. Why did it come about originally? I don't know. That's lost in the depths of
Yeah.
time. It goes back to
JQ might know because you were at the insurers at the time, JQ. But in the old days on DB, or it's 3 1/80, I guess, on tax-free cash on DB. But the new pension scheme, personal pensions, were introduced on the 1st of July '88. Did it come straight in with that regulation,
Yeah,
JQ?
it did. But
25%.
It did. But why the original commutation factors? I don't know. One of the issues that would emerge if they were to reduce it would be typically the funding rates in DB would worsen straight away because of the proportion of people taking tax. Typically, tax-free cash is maybe saves 20% on that proportion of liability, that sort of order, relative to annuity style. So I think there's other factors that would come into play if they were to reduce it. I can see them just holding it and letting inflation erode the value over time, because I don't think Rachel Reeves can cope with the quote, Rachel from accounts steals your tax-free cash or whatever. It's going to be damaging politically.
Yeah. And also, I mean, we've got a few providers on here, and we've had providers on Playpen many times. Even the providers, crikey, Master Trust or whatever, that's a nightmare to change systems and all the comms and all the calcs across the board. I mean, that would be horrendous for the industry. They couldn't do it on a cliff edge. It'd have to be done over the next at least 12 months. And then in the background of that, you've got dashboard that they've got to cope with and the new pensions bill. I mean, even looking at logistics and admin, it'll be struggle to do. Would you agree with that, JQ?
Without a doubt. I mean, if they trail it though, that it's going to be happening in 12 months' time, the flood of money coming out is going to be mighty. The cry of foul for people who aren't yet at retirement is going to be significant. There'll be the civil service.
There'll be a strike, a national strike.
Well, it's challenging, and I think your point about coping is really relevant, Steve. Which is what we've seen over the years is that the occasionally policy that's been introduced has been a nightmare for companies, HR professionals, to instigate policy on. We saw that with annual allowance and lifetime allowance, and that made it really difficult for sponsors to be kept on side. And one thing that seems to be forgotten on regularly is that whichever government of the day is in power, they need to keep the employers on side because they're the biggest advocates of pensions and savings, or a very big advocate, and therefore they need to keep it as simple as possible so they can cope. And that would be my theory, as I said, idiosyncratic changes which make it very difficult from an operational, a comms perspective, messaging, really hard.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on tax-free cash before we move on to probably one of the biggest hot potatoes, which is salary sacrifice? But any other
Actually,
comments?
there is one comment in the chat from Peter Cameron Brown. Perhaps Peter would like to explain his
Yeah.
comment there
Go on,
on
Peter.
contracts of employment.
Yes, the point I was making was that in the public sector, the lump sum payment is part of the effectively the pension promise in the contract of employment, and that has always been on the assumption that that would be paid free of tax. So there's a tremendous, you're effectively reducing your employment terms for past service by taxing it, as a government is the employer and is also the tax raising authority. So I think it's a problem, and as John said, the issue is that it would actually raise the public sector pension scheme costs correspondingly if they were substituted pension for the tax-free cash. So that was a point I was going to make, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks for that. Yeah. So the public sector will be treated differently to the private sector, maybe, is the only other thing I'd say about that. But that's probably a bit argumentative, but there we go.
Yeah. I think politically with Labour and such like that would be reform. That would be
Everybody in the private sector gets not a lot, and everybody in the public sector gets everything they like. So there we go. Anyway, moving on. Salary sacrifice. I'm going to start with Fiona, because Fiona is very close to a lot of small to medium-sized clients, and I think there's probably a lot of noise going on there, Fiona, isn't there, with this huge potential reduction or even omission of salary sacrifice. What do you think, Fiona?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sort of hits everyone in the in middle incomes again, doesn't it? Middle to sort of slightly higher incomes. I think if you're earning 40k, that's where that 2k comes from. The average UK salary is 40k, so 5% employer contribution is 2,000. But ultimately, for someone earning 60,000 and above, those they're not able to reduce their tax bill. So those sitting on tax boundaries who've used salary sacrifice, those people are all going to lose out. People who are earning slightly more, over 100k, and who are perhaps using salary sacrifice to get back some of their personal allowance, those people are all going to be affected. It has a huge knock-on impact for the employers, really, as well. If you looked at 60k, so if you have an average employees who are earning 60k and they're making 5% contributions, actually the cost of the employer is about £22,500 a year. So it's really significant. Whilst it absolutely impacts all the individuals, it's a real significant cost to the employers, who are perhaps using that cost as well to pay for things like private medical insurance. So this has a huge knock-on effect. It's going to reduce incomes, I think, in other places, because obviously you've got P11D incomes if employers start to get rid of PMI schemes or cash plans, etc., that they're paying for. You're reducing P11D benefits that are coming in. So I think it has quite a big knock-on effect on both sides. A child benefit for individuals is paid, starts to reduce after you earn 60k. So if you had someone who earned £70,000, not only are they not getting their NI savings, they are also losing over £2,500 a year in child benefit.
Yeah.
So I think it has, just huge sort of ramifications in more ways than just you're losing the tax efficiency of saving. And I think I think if they do it, they probably will make more money. I think where we still have relief at source or net pay schemes, I still meet people who are higher rate taxpayers who don't understand they have to claim back the additional 20%. So I think there's an element of maybe the government relying on people's apathy to not to not claim that back as well, and put even more money in the coffers.
Well, also presumably SMEs are struggling with just the general NI change, and this is just going to add another layer of cost, and that's going to affect pay rises and added benefits going forward, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
employers are going to say, what the
absolutely,
hell? We've just suffered X increase on NI, and now if that goes, salary exchange goes, that's going to add another level of costs. I mean, it's not good news, is it?
Well, can I just come in here?
Yeah,
Let me just tell you an argument which I heard coming from people quite close to government, which is that the overwhelming majority of the funds which are salary sacrifice are from very high earners, the 75,000 and higher incomes. The point that they made was that salary sacrifice at that level is tax advantaged in many different ways, as was said, but it also feeds into pensions which are themselves tax advantage with respect to arrangements with for inheritance tax purposes. So sort of eliminating this could be a way of eliminating the inheritance tax loophole problem at source, which had never occurred to me until I heard it yesterday.
Yeah,
I think, Con, there's an interesting. Well, it's the words we use, isn't it? So bonus sacrifice and salary sacrifice. If they looked at clamping down on bonus sacrifice, that would probably deal with your £75,000 and above. The salary sacrifice piece is the reason why it's incredibly complex. Is one person's sacrificed salary is another person's nil contribution pension scheme, and how they're going to work out the difference between two people where one is on a lower salary but is got a non-contributory scheme that the company's paying into, and someone else is deemed to be sacrificing salary. I have no idea. I mean, that is a real minefield.
Presumably, they'll introduce they'll introduce something in benefits in kind regulations.
Well, if they were to do that, then the challenge they've got with that straight away is, do they then have to put a deemed value on the DB accrual and put an NI charge on that in relation to? I mean, and that's a minefield again. So I question whether they really thought that through.
Agree with you, but I think the balance of probability now is that we do see salary sacrifice not to the down to the 5%, the £2,000 level.
Yeah, I can't see it just being. Sorry, I was just saying I can't see it being just bonus sacrifice, because usually that when you've got people at that level, I think they're taking advice, and ultimately they could then sacrifice salary, couldn't they, and use bonus as salary. So I don't necessarily see that. I guess that's a workaround if that does get introduced. But it feeds into more into the advice market, doesn't it? Because people are going to have to really make sure they're utilising taxation and things like scheme pays as well. I mean, it makes, scheme pays for tax purposes, although most pension schemes offer scheme pays now. So where you've got individuals who are still making them, could the tax bill come out of the pension scheme? It's still tax advantageous.
So scheme pays on tax is different, clearly different to the NI bill.
Definitely the NI bill. But in terms of it still being tax advantageous for, it's still going to grow in a tax-free environment, isn't it? But I guess it makes that even more of a grey area than it's been previously, pension over savings.
I mean, the smart political move would be to bring something in at 5k level and recognise that it's going to stop the top earners doing or limit it, and it wouldn't get the outcry the same level. But whether they do that or not, I don't know.
But nobody's raised the serious point that the Chancellor raised, which was, of course, that all this money is going into buying expensive bikes. I don't know if you read that, but there was. I mean, this is clearly much more complicated. The people I've talked to about this, ordinary people, don't know about pensions, can't understand a word of it. It's just impossible for them to understand. even if I explain as best I can. There's a number of things where the two things coming through in the bill are also based on sort of the feeling that people are enjoying luxury out of all this. As I say, buying expensive bikes.
I'd be really
okay.
surprised if the data shows that. That's more than likely come from anecdotal evidence, and policy should never be made on anecdotes. I mean, how many people truly, Fiona, you'll know this, how many people are buying expensive bikes, salary sacrifice? It's not happening, is it?
None. No. I mean, yeah. I mean, everybody I speak to doesn't like to. All the employers don't like to get involved in it because it's overcomplicated anyway. So you've maybe, and most of them get rid of it because there's one person who's used it in the last 3 years. I think electric vehicles will be interesting.
Well, I was
That's
gonna
the space
say.
that it will be interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be hit with a double whammy, isn't it? Because they're talking about introducing a pay per mile as well. So I think, yeah, that's really going to affect companies putting in electric vehicles, because we've seen probably a 50-60% increase in people asking about that. So, but doesn't that go against the sustainability targets that are being set for employers? It all feels very, very contradictory.
But also the electronic car market is going to struggle a bit if suddenly, I'm not saying sales are going to fall off a cliff, but it's going to change people's mindset. If you've got people out there like, Select Leasing and Octopus Leasing, or whatever they're called, it's a massive change, isn't it? If people suddenly say, well, it's not that advantageous now to get an electric car, so I might get a hybrid or a normal petrol or a diesel, or I don't know. Do you think it could be that big, Fiona? A massive U-turn on electric
Yeah,
vehicles?
potentially, and it doesn't necessarily. I think often workplace arrangements, almost why, because salary sacrifice would be the reason why people would offer workplace electric vehicle arrangements. So I think it could certainly impact people buying electric cars through a workplace scheme.
Yeah. Okay.
And hybrid cars, speaking as a hybrid car owner, could be hit with both the pay per mile EV stuff and the fuel duty on the fuel we buy. So that
It's a double whammy.
doesn't make sense.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
another reason to strike, just to strike and get the cars out and block the M25, or I don't know, whatever. Anyway, but this.
Can I say something?
Yeah, you can, Henry. Hello, Henry. You're back.
I've had my hand up for the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, I can't see it because I'm presenting. Sorry.
Chris Giles has as well, so we'll get on to him.
Yep.
I would just say that Willis Towers Watson puts forward some interesting numbers on salary sacrifice. It's of course not going to hurt at all people sacrificing 5% on 40,000, who the government reckon are the average people, and it's going to be totally hurting those with broad shoulders, who Rachel Reeves says are going to have to carry the bulk of this budget's strain. So, while we make these arguments up about how awful it's going to be for pensions, it's not going to mean very much for most people at all. It is going to raise apparently £3 billion by abolishing national insurance on sacrifice savings on national insurance. So I can see the Labour Party seeing this as good news, and frankly, it's one of the few things that Torsten Bell and Rachel Reeves can do, which is going to get a round of applause from the country as a whole. The only place where they're going to get a serious scream is going to be the financial services industry, who nobody likes very much anyway.
However, Henry, I did say to Con and Fiona before we started that there's big chunks of the civil service and HMRC and the Treasury who use salary exchange. So are they going to strike? Yeah, I've heard of government departments using salary exchange. Yeah, if I'm wrong, please tell me, anybody.
Well,
but I've heard that government departments use salary exchange, so they're going to get stuff as well.
LGPS allows salary exchange for AVCs, but no other part of government, civil service, NHS, or whatever, do. In fact, AVC-wise, try very hard to get into those organisations that were told to go away because the government was not pro salary sacrifice in the public sector. LGPS are pretty well unique when it comes to ABC. So I just don't see it as being something which the Treasury likes at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So as a
That's-
panel, everybody's in agreement that's probably going to happen, and it's about 3 to 4 billion saving.
Yeah.
Yep.
Probably
Yeah.
get away with it.
Yeah.
It will be the cheapest of the many taxes they could have on the smorgasbord, but one of the most effective.
Okay. Right. Okay. Let's move on.
Chris Giles.
Yes, Chris
Chris
Giles.
has been
Sorry, Chris.
waiting
I
for
can't see your
ages.
hand, but I think you've
Oh,
been up
right.
your hand. Yeah. Sorry.
It's not actually on Michael's list here, but it's something that might not be coming out in the statement, but certainly is in the finance bill, and that's inheritance tax, which I know is not coming in until 27, but it appears to be all over this year's finance bill. And the question, I mean, Ros Altman has been pushing very heavily on the admin angle of this. I mean, she's probably gone a bit over the top in terms of the impact on people, because of course it's basically only payable on second death. So it'll only arguably affect a small number of people when they should have spent most of their pots if they were genuinely going to go along with the quid pro quo. You got tax relief while you were accumulating, and you paid some of it back when you were decumulating. And if you deliberately didn't, because you thought it was a good tax wheeze, then it's arguable to have no sympathy. But on the other hand, there are people, you know, who will die young, and there will be situations where people, I think, should be allowed to transfer the money directly to the pension fund of beneficiaries. And therefore, I would argue strongly for the inclusion of something called a personal pension relief. And if you think about it, the £1 million allowance that on IHT at the moment, well, most people, I'll say most people, you had a lot of people in southern England, as soon as you take their property into account, they've already used up their £1 million, and everything in the pension pot is potentially liable to IHT. So I think there should be an allowance, obviously reducing with age, whereby you can transfer money directly into your beneficiaries, and it should, without tax relief. So of course that will mean that people building up pots in their 40s and 50s won't necessarily make the same level of contributions, and therefore there won't be the tax relief. It should help to get some money back, but not you know, overall I think that would be the fairer system.
Okay. What does the panel think of that? That sounds a bit of a north-south divide tax. Is that a challenging comment to say it's a north-south divide tax?
I think there is an issue with that, but I think one of the big issues, you said it's on first death, only on second death. It's only on second death if you're married. A hell of a lot of people think that common law, a lot of people think that there is such a thing as common law marriage, which gets you the same benefits, and there isn't. And the other thing that happens is, because there's no age limit on this, if you were possibly thinking that at some point you might need to get married for this kind of stuff, but you didn't, and you suddenly dropped dead of a heart attack in your early 60s, then potentially a lot of that money is going to go into first it's going to go into 40% of it's going to go into Treasury possibly, and then you're going to be the beneficiary going to be taxed on what they eventually take out. I don't like the whole system. I appreciate there is an age difference for the beneficial for the income tax they're treating, but I think it's going to have some really nasty adverse consequences in practice, which I don't think they thought about.
Well, that's what.
Having said that, I'm not opposed to IHT on pensions in general. I just think the way it's being done is going to be. I think it's not helpful.
And that's why in the House of Lords, I mean, normally these things have to go through committee in the Commons, and if it's a budget measure, it's not normally, you know, ripped apart in the Lords, is it? But so it might be the Finance Bill Committee in the Commons are the people to lobby. But essentially, Lord Livermore, who's the government minister in the Lords, he has not given, shall we say, a lot of comfort to the likes of Ros Altman, and she thinks that the whole thing will just end up being a complete nightmare for personal representatives.
Yeah.
Because
There's
in other words,
another
what it
point.
should happen is, if you're going to do something for those who've got £500,000 or £1 million pots, do something like a default unused pension levy. So at least you then take a small amount and start and use that as a starting point. Because it's the 6-month rule that's the real issue, isn't it? All inherit. If you don't pay within 6 months, you're liable for penalties. And if you've got more than one pot, several pots, which even, wealthy people can have a few pots, then you could end up personal representatives getting themselves in a right mess.
Yeah.
Can I go back a bit?
Yep, Michael. Yep.
Just say, well, the business of inheritance tax, the other people who are going to be hurt are single people who don't seem to be treated very well anyway in the pension scheme. But because at the moment, if you're a single person, you can pass on the money, but you can't do that if with the new bill coming through.
Yep. No, I'll take that on board. Yeah.
We've got a couple of people with their hands up. So Peter and John have got their hands up. I don't know who wants to go first.
Who's first? Somebody. Yep.
I think I might be number 2.
You're
I think.
first. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Just I was just thinking. A lot of these things we're talking about is to do with the structure of the NI system. So salary sacrifice, the fact that LLPs and pensioners don't pay NI compared to other taxpayers and all these sort of things. I do wonder if they might be tempted to try and, I personally thought the 2 up, 2 down was probably quite an appropriate approach, and perhaps we should have it 8 up and 8 down. But that was it, and I just wonder what people felt. Because of and it's the relationship between the employer's tax and NI and the employee's tax and NI, which I just wonder if they perhaps will want to try and address the inequalities from employment against non-employment.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. Very good point. Any response, or should we move on? We've got 10 minutes to go. Go on, Henry. Go on.
One thing that I find difficult in the analysis of the budget, which is being carried out by the press in advance, is that it's dealing entirely with taking money away from people, whereas actually quite a lot of the stories which the government have been trying to float with very little success are about the things that they want to bring in, which are going to be helpful for people. And I think we've got to a point now where we regard budgets as being a one-way street, with everyone going in that direction, and it's the bad news street. I think there are actually going to be some quite helpful stuff in this budget for ordinary people, and I wondered if we could possibly turn a little bit to them rather than just focus on the negative.
Such as, Henry, such as?
Well,
the 2-child cap. The 2-child cap is the obvious major benefit for the population at large. The problem, Henry, though, and the reason for the focus on the negative side of things is, even though there are some benefits which involve increased state spending, the situation we have is that we are seeing an overall increase in aggregate taxation. And that's why if we were to be living within our means, it would be a different kettle of fish. And that's largely about increasing or improving productivity, given our particular demographics.
Well, I think the thing the government need to get across in this budget is that this government's main role is growth. And that's what the Chancellor's been trying to get over with very little success.
And the
in
Chancellor's
last
been
couple of
the
weeks.
Chancellor's been the principal reason that growth has been suppressed. What she did with NI really hurt this economy in the last budget. And she's got another variation on it here, which is the business rates charge. I don't know if you saw it, but Channel Tunnel decided that they are going to halt all of their proposed investments in the UK, which are needed actually. And the reason for it is a 200% increase in business rate. Now, the business rate that we have in this country includes plant and equipment within a facility. That's nonsense. If I go and invest in a plant and I put plant and equipment into a warehouse, let's call it a data center, I now
Right.
have to pay rates on my investment in that plant. Well, I got news for you. I ain't going to do it.
Well, nobody
yeah,
asked you actually, Con.
Sorry?
Nobody's asking you. We are looking for data centers to operate a lot more efficiently. I would hope, and you asked one of the questions, one of the areas where we will see government putting some support is in power, so that the cost of power reduces and so that power becomes more accessible to data centers, which is needed, because if we're going to achieve what we want to with AI, we're going to need more power and more water in the hands of those people running AI, principally in our two wonderful universities, Oxford and Cambridge, but right the way around the country too. Yeah. And these things, you know, if we carry on simply going on about the bad things and missing out on the good things, then we will, as a country, get to a point where we really do meet our own doom as predicted by us. So, sorry, that's
what
the end
I'm
of my
pointing
little
out,
rant.
Henry,
But it's going to be a doom and gloom budget, Henry, isn't it? It is a
What I
doom
am
and gloom
pointing
budget.
out, Henry, is that this is doom of our Chancellor's making. This is not going to increase the likelihood or indeed lower the cost of producing data centers or any other automated facility for production. Okay, separately, there's a huge debate to be had over the relative taxation of capital and personal incomes of individuals versus capital. That's a separate debate to be had, but it needs to be had.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we move
Can I-
on?
I've been trying to get in for
Yeah, go on
about
then.
10 minutes.
Yep. You're allowed.
Couple of things. The inheritance tax side will never be paid. If you look at my pension scheme with 28 money units in it, my kids will be left with 8 units after the tax. Now that's going to prompt me to make sure that never ever happens. Back in 72, we used to put an annuity and a whole life back to back, destroyed the capital in the scheme and recreated a trust for the kids. There's so many simple ways of negating that, and people will be energized to get out of it. And all it's done is pissing people off with money for no good reason. My fear is they'll bring in an exit tax, a deemed capital disposal on exit. Trouble is, that's shutting the stable door well after all the horses have gone. There's loads and loads of people already left the country, me included, because they don't know what they're doing.
You've already done it. You've already gone.
I did it in 2016 when that stupid referendum, when you knew the lunatics were now in charge. So now, and there you are. One of the results of all this is you get rid of Labour and you finish up with an equally incompetent person or more incompetent person in Farage, who's got a track record of repeated failure. And I'm worried about the car. I started this thinking about it when you were talking about the car business. The writing's on the wall there. There are 2 companies went down in the second-hand car financing business last year. It feels like 2008 again. And all we need is a bit of a doom loop of redemptions now in an illiquid market, and you're looking at stagflation. It's really quite serious. There's nothing in anything that's been discussed so far, apart from what Henry's just said, on making the pie bigger. It's all about dividing the pie up even more. And that's not a productive thing to do. You need to be far more positive and do something meaningful. Maybe what happened to the Mansion House initiatives? Just bullshit again. No, they need some energy into this, and somebody who knows what they're doing.
John, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes to
Can I
go.
say something?
Yep, go on then, Michael. Yep.
Yep. Two things really. One is in the last few minutes, I think we've gone much wider than sort of talking about the budget, and because I think in the end they're going to stick the best they can to the budget they've got. But if you look at all the things I've listed on my list, none of those are growth done. Now there is supposedly a large amount of investment being made by the Chancellor in non-day-to-day expenditure. We hear nothing about that at all. There's no feedback, as in the end of 29-30. There's no feedback about whether any money will be coming through from those sort of from the investments. It seems to me a complete lack of wish to do very much about growth at all. If there is, it doesn't show.
Okay, thank you, Michael. We've got a few minutes left. Can we just briefly talk about Mansion House, taxes on property? Is everybody aware that that's going to happen? Is that? But also, Michael, your table suggests $500 million. Do we think residential home tax is going to happen? Yes or no?
It's clearly not worth doing at that price.
For $500 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
Jake?
we're talking about quite a number of billions, basically, and $500 million is not going to do much, and it's going to cause enormous difficulties in arranging it. It's going to cause an enormous fusspot about all sorts of things, and for $500 million, it's not worth it.
No. Okay. Fiona, what do you think?
Yeah, it's expensive to set up, isn't it? Like you say, to actually monitor it and charge it, it's going to cost a fortune because the government doesn't particularly do anything on the cheap. So it doesn't feel like it will raise enough money.
Okay.
I think 50% of people over age 80 have got some form of cognitive impairment. God knows how the hell they're going to cope with this. It's a real challenge. I mean, it's a non-trivial thing to in terms of people of a certain age and having to who are capital rich and income poor. It feels like it's a disaster, that one.
Disaster it may well. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Well, I was just going to say the other thing is, of course, they're going to revalue 2 million houses. That should take about 10 years, at least, I would have thought.
And reform will be in by then, won't they? According to the polls.
Green Party.
Green Party. Yeah.
I think that the politics of applying a mansion tax are simply too great, too attractive to Reeves and the Labour Party, and that you will see it.
Yes.
As for the way in which houses are valued, I think you will probably see some formulaic version to increase the value from previous values to a new taxable value, which may or may not bear much resemblance to the actual market value of the property. And yes, it's going to cause a lot of problems for those people who are asset rich and cash poor. But I think it's a racing certainty that Reeves will do it.
Well, the last one to leave, turn the lights out.
There you go, John. Or you can fly back.
Well, I'll bid you £2 for your house.
You buggered off already. You've got no right to have a go at us for staying.
The last point I want to make before we wrap up is there was changes in limited liability partnerships, LLPs. We've got a number of actuaries on, a few lawyers on, I think. Is this LLP attack going to happen? Because quite a few of the LLPs are saying it is. What do we think? JQ, you're in the actuarial profession. What do you think?
I think it's going to happen because, sadly, it seems to me that people think that LLPs have been structured so that they can have reduced NI. LLPs have been around for the last sort of 15 years. And there's a good reason why they have partnerships. It's because they've got skin in the game. And I would leave that alone. I don't think that's going to do anything productive when the lawyers start putting their fees up, architects start putting their fees up, the professional classes who are in partnerships start putting their fees up. I don't think it's going to do any good, but I think it's going to happen.
If it did happen,
sorry,
can I just say, if it did happen, that then opens the door for national insurance for pensioners. Because once you've done it for one lot, you can do it for another lot. And they'd love to get their hands on that.
Wow. Okay. Con? Yeah.
I'm told by a number of people that it's unlikely to actually extend to LLPs, that the lawyers have seriously seen off the prospect of that.
Thank goodness. Okay. Last but not least, do we think any of the panel, is there any good news that's going to come out of the budget? I mean, I think we've been a bit of doom and gloom session today, but is there anything? I mean, Henry, you sort of put a knowledge.
Travel agents are going to do well.
Travel agents, yeah, okay. Who else is going to benefit from the budget?
Go back to bloody Portugal. So we don't need this nonsense talk. There will be a positive side to this, and I hope that we'll come away from this thinking, well, actually, there is a side to Britain which I'll be quite proud to live in.
Hopefully, agreed.
Yeah, it's called Funchal, I think, isn't it, John?
Yeah. Madeira wine is supposed to be quite nice as well, isn't it, John?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. All right.
No, needless to say, fags and booze will go up again by more than inflation. Yeah. I'm not sure why they're taking on milk tax. I think that's something to do with sugar, isn't it?
Oh wow. Oh, there we go.
Milkshakes are going to go up. They've decided to increase the sugar tax.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, though. I'm not averse to the sugar tax and alcohol and tobacco and stuff. Don't necessarily think they're terrible taxes.
What about ISA? What about ISA reform? We haven't talked about ISAs beyond pension, but do we think ISA is going to be reformed?
Yeah, it's going down. Cash going down to 12,000. Another good thing.
Right.
Absolutely.
More into equities then. Equity
ISA. One favourable thing would be if they really did have a reasonable buffer to deal with problems that arise.
Yeah,
I mean, that would actually be favourable because at the moment
a 30 billion buffer would make most of the problems go away.
How many?
30 billion. Does anybody
That's close to the historic average? It's actually a little under the historic average.
Does everybody fancy Reeves's job on this panel?
A bit like the England job, isn't it?
Oh, well, you just won 11 in a row. You don't have a laugh at us.
I'm talking cricket, Henry. Sorry.
Oh,
right. Yeah, right. Okay.
John, my money would be on the Chancellor at the next budget being Darren Jones, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Not reform.
Not reform. No.
Can we wrap this up?
Yes, let's wrap this up.
Yes,
can I say thank you to all the panelists, Fiona, Con, Michael, JQ and Henry. Thanks for everybody's input. Thanks for your notes in the chat. We'll put the video up at lunchtime. Hope you enjoyed today's session. Lots of doom and gloom, but you never know, there could be a few items of silver lining coming out of it. So let's just hope that we don't have to turn the lights off. But thank you, panel. Brilliant session. Really enjoyed it. And we'll get the video up. And next week we might have a post-budget session. No, maybe not. We'll do something completely different.
I'm not going to join a bunch of
Actually, let's have a session from Henry on
Yeah.
all the things we should be cheering about in the budget.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be 10 minutes, about 10 minutes then. That's fine.
You think it can go that long?
No.
Maybe five, maybe five. But no, thank you everyone for today's input.
You can go there
And as
while,
usual,
mate.
let's pray
Super.
for peace in the East. We might be there with Ukraine, maybe. Let's pray for peace in the East, Henry. Every week we
Yeah.
pray for peace in the East. So let's do it. So good stuff. Thank you, everyone.
Right.
I hope you enjoyed today's session. Really appreciate your support. Take care. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
bye.
you.
Bye. Well done.